Tanner, I saw a stat from a NASCAR Insights account on X/Twitter that I couldn't believe. I think Jeff Gluck even retweeted it and said, like, I would not have guessed this in a million years. This was the 16th consecutive Truck Series race that finished in regulation without needing to go into overtime. And you think about that in light of the conversation that we just had with our Cup Series drivers. How in the world, when you think back to the Phoenix debacle that we had in 2023, not being able to get that race over with, how are the truck drivers seemingly better at this than their Cup Series counterparts, supposedly the 40 best drivers in the world?
I have been thinking about this since you sent me the script, and I've been trying to formulate a cogent and great reaction to this. And I haven't been able to quite piece together why it is this way. But if I had to take a stab at it, my best guess is that since there are less laps in the race and much of these drivers are inexperienced and don't have the confidence necessary to make some of the big moves that some of the more experienced drivers are able to make. I feel like that probably plays a factor in all of it. I see up at the front Friesen, Ankrum, and to an extent Bailey Curry, Chandler Smith. Caden Honeycutt is more of a newcomer, but Ben Rhodes, Ty Majeski, Grant Enfinger, these are guys that have been in this series for almost a decade in some cases, or more than a decade in someone like Enfinger's case. These are people that have been in the truck series for so long, and they know what they can and can't do with the truck, what kind of positions they can and can't put them in that will result in an accident. And just in general, I think veteran racers are a little bit more likely to not make those moves when it's not going to be advantageous for them. And they have learned through drivers yelling at them at their hauler after the race for making a dumb move in the past. They are a little bit more self-aware in that regard. Versus like younger drivers who might be more inclined to not make a dumb move so they don't have those people coming to their hauler, et cetera, because they saw people like Carson Hocevar constantly getting yelled at as they were coming up through the ranks. Someone like Kevin Harvick, who ended up being suspended at one point in his young career because he kept getting into incidents all the time in the lower series. I think that there's something to the truck series being full of lifers that have a ton of experience. I think that plays the biggest factor. And as you can see, most of those drivers ended up towards the front at the end of this race versus many of the younger drivers who ended up either laps down or involved in accidents towards the end of the event. So I would love to hear if you have any sort of a theory on this, but that's probably where I would lean towards.
Oh. Well, I'm kind of stumped. I think I'm like you in terms of at least an initial reaction. I'd have to, think about it a little bit, but again, it's something that, that Phoenix race was less than a year and a half ago. And that's kind of, again, we talk about a culture problem with our young drivers. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It leaves me kind of speechless seeing a number like that. And I guess going back and fact checking it's been a while. Obviously we got a clean finish to the championship race last year, and Ty Majeski ended up winning that one and taking a championship. But I don't know. I think of, obviously Carson Hocevar, I think, was the most notorious of those young drivers. And I think you've seen that reputation. You saw it yesterday in the Cup race, not being afraid to ruffle some feathers, which I think, is a good quality for a young driver to have, not being afraid to make an aggressive move. But there's also a fine line between that and, going a step too far and crossing that line and ultimately causing an accident. And I think we saw that far too often when he was in the truck series, and we're seeing it now again in Cup. But I don't know. I don't think it's a Carson Hocevar problem. I don't think, you take Hocevar out of the truck series and put him in Cup, and now all of a sudden, like, the two series, have had their problems, shifted here, and it's no longer a problem in trucks. It's now a problem in Cup just because of one driver. I don't think that's the case at all. I think several young drivers are far too aggressive, and make those similar mistakes. And even the veterans, it used to be, when I got into the sport, you had your Johnny Bensons and Ron Hornadays and Mike Skinners and Jack Spragues, Ted Musgraves of the world, and kind of like veterans that were good drivers in their own right, just never really got that cup opportunity, that they were looking for. And I guess if you want to, truck lifers is kind of a term that we've coined now. I think of the ones that we still have in this series, like Matt Crafton, and thinking about the controversies that he's gotten involved in the last couple of years, namely with Nick Sanchez, Talladega, and Johnny Sauter having a reputation as a very aggressive driver. I think of even some of the veterans that we have in the series, not necessarily having the cleanest reputation, and yet here we are on a 16 race streak without needing overtime to finish these truck races. And in the Cup Series, we're 2 for 2 to start the new season. You would think that those records should be reversed in many ways. But I don't know. I think that, again, it's just kind of goes back to the biggest frustration for me in the open segment we started the show with, is that if we could get these finishes in regulation, and I guess, obviously Daytona was, kind of a different situation. We ended in regulation, but we still had a wreck on the last lap, and that brought out the caution. But if we could just finish cleanly in regulation without a wreck on the last lap, then we wouldn't even need to have that conversation to begin with. And again, it's just kind of wild to me that we have a situation now where that's more likely in one of the development series than it is in the top series in NASCAR Cup. So again, I think maybe it just goes back to the fact that overtime has been a thing for so many years now, that drivers know that, okay, maybe, a caution coming out with 3 to go isn't going to end the race now. So you can be a little bit more aggressive without, losing your chance to gain a position, knowing that if a caution comes out, that's going to be it. And, you're not going to have enough time to get the race restarted. I don't know. And obviously this is the series that, had that first introduced overtime even before Cup and Xfinity did. So, there's another irony there. Yeah, exactly.
30 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those, as my co-host Brandon might say, it's one of those stats that you can put in the makes you think category that you're not really sure what to make of it, but we'll see. I don't know. Maybe we've jinxed it now. Maybe we'll get an overtime finish at the next race because of this now. But again, it is a pretty remarkable streak, all things considered, that we've been able to say that about Truck Series for, I guess, 16 races in a row now. So we'll see if that continues.
Yeah, and hats off to them. Hats off to the Truck Series field for being able to hold your marbles together long enough to get to the end under regulation. Thank you.